The rain was absolutely relentless, just drumming away against the kitchen glass while Sarah sat there across from me. She wasn't really drinking her coffee, she was just kind of nervously tracing the edge of her mug with her finger. We've been married for 6 years now, and in that time, I've gotten pretty good at figuring out what she's thinking just by the way she stays quiet. But this silence? This was different. It felt heavy, like she was sitting on a secret that was weighing her down. "Caleb, look, there's something I've got to talk to you about," she finally told me. Her eyes are this bright green, but right then, she couldn't even look me in the face. I put my fork down immediately. Whatever appetite I had just vanished. I asked her what was up, and she brought up her friend Jennifer, you know, the one who's been having such a rough time trying to get pregnant. Sarah stopped for a second, taking this real shaky breath to steady herself. Then she just dropped it. Jennifer asked her to be a surrogate. The words just sort of hung there in the air between us. I just blinked, trying to wrap my head around it. I told her straight up, "Sarah, that's a massive deal. Have you actually sat down and thought about what that really means for us? Or what it's going to do to your body?" She got a bit defensive then, her voice getting a little louder. She told me she'd thought about nothing else for weeks. She started explaining how desperate Jennifer was, how she tried everything and IVF had failed 3 times already. Apparently, she just can't carry a baby herself. So I asked her, "And she picked you? Why you, specifically?" Sarah looked away again. She muttered something about them being close and Jennifer trusting her. She even went on about the medical side, saying Dr. Morrison already looked at her history and gave the green light. But something felt off to me. I mean, sure, they were friends, but they weren't "carry your baby for 9 months" close. They grabbed coffee maybe once a month and chatted at neighborhood parties. It didn't add up. When I asked when this even happened, she admitted it was a few weeks ago. She claimed she wanted to be sure before she told me. A few weeks? I said. I couldn't believe it. This affects our whole life, our marriage, our future plans. I got up and started pacing by the window. We'd literally been talking about starting our own family next year. She tried to tell me we could still do that this would just delay things a little bit. A little bit? Between the pregnancy and the recovery and the emotional toll, you're looking at a year of our lives, minimum. Her jaw tightened. She got that stubborn look I know all too well. Then she hit me with the real punch to the gut. She'd already told her she'd do it. I was floored. "You what?" I asked. She told me she'd already said yes and was starting hormone treatments next month. I turned around to face her, feeling the anger just bubbling up in my chest. "You made a choice like this without even talking to your husband?" I asked. She told me she knew I'd react this way and try to talk her out of it. Her voice cracked, saying Jennifer deserved to be a mother. I fired back, "And what about what we deserve? What about our partnership?" She stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. She told me it was her body and her choice, and that she wasn't asking for my permission, she was telling me what she was doing. The coldness in her voice just stunned me into silence. This didn't feel like the woman I married, the one who valued our unity. I just quietly told her that if this was her choice, I wouldn't stop her, but she shouldn't expect me to be happy. She softened a bit and tried to take my hand, saying it was just 9 months and we'd get through it. I pulled away and headed for the door. "Nothing about this is normal, Sarah," I told her. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I just lay there listening to her breathe, my mind going a million miles an hour. Everything felt wrong, the secrecy, the rush, how defensive she was. And then it hit me, Jennifer wasn't even married. Who was the father? Why hadn't Sarah mentioned that? I couldn't shake the feeling, so I grabbed my laptop, went to the guest room, and pulled up Jennifer's Facebook. When the page loaded, I felt like my blood turned to ice. There was a photo from 2 weeks ago of her with her arm around a guy. The caption was all about a second chance at love and starting a family. The man in the photo was Michael Richardson, Sarah's ex-boyfriend. My hands were literally shaking. Jennifer wasn't just a friend, she was dating the guy Sarah had been with for 3 years before me. The guy she said was ancient history. Suddenly, the secrecy and the rush all made sense. Sarah wasn't doing this for a friend. She was carrying her ex's baby. I sat in that guest room until dawn, just staring at that photo until it blurred. The name Michael Richardson made my stomach turn. Sarah never talked about him. It was always, it didn't work out, or, we wanted different things. By morning, I was sitting at the table with a coffee when Sarah came down for work. She saw the dark circles under my eyes and asked if I'd slept in the guest room. I just slid my phone across the table with the Facebook photo pulled up. "You want to tell me who the father is?" I asked. All the color drained out of her face. She didn't say anything for a long time, just gripping the counter. I asked her point blank if Jennifer was dating her ex. She tried to, yes, but I cut her off. "So you're carrying Michael's baby. Were you ever going to tell me?" She tried to come toward me, acting like she was trying to calm me down, saying she was going to tell me but knew I'd react badly. React badly? I stood up, my chair echoing through the room. "You lied to me, Sarah. You made me think this was some selfless act for a friend when you're really helping your ex-boyfriend become a dad." She tried to claim Jennifer was her friend, but I wasn't having it. They'd known each other maybe 2 years. But Michael? She lived with him for 3 years. They talked about marriage. My voice was getting louder, and I couldn't even stop it. "How do you not see how insane this is?" She started crying, mascara running down her face. She told me she loved me and that Michael was the past. "The past you're growing a baby for?" I asked. I told her how betrayed I felt and grabbed my jacket. I had to get out of there just to breathe air that wasn't full of lies. She panicked, asking where I was going. I told her I was going to work, or just away, I didn't even know. She was begging me to stay and talk, but I was already out the door. I just stood there at the door for a second, looking back at her. I told her straight, she should have talked to me before she ever gave them her word. Before she decided to hide the truth from her own husband. Before she basically chose him over what we have. She tried to deny it, saying she didn't choose him, but I wasn't buying it. The words felt heavy as they came out, quieter than I even expected. I told her she was willing to give up 9 months of her life to carry his kid, but she couldn't find 5 measly minutes to be honest with me. I walked out and left her there in the kitchen, just sobbing. Trying to work that day was a total joke. I sat in my office staring at the computer screen, but I wasn't seeing a single thing on it. My phone was blowing up, non-stop texts from Sarah. Apologies, long-winded explanations, her just begging me to come home so we could talk. I ignored every single one of them. By the time lunch rolled around, I'd made up my mind. I called my brother, Simon. "I need a lawyer," I told him the second he picked up. "A good one." Simon was blindsided. He wanted to know what happened, so I laid it all out for him, the surrogacy, the lies, and the fact that Michael was the one behind it all. Simon just listened. The silence on his end said everything. Finally, he told me he was sorry I was going through this. He suggested that even if I wasn't ready to pull the trigger on a divorce, I should at least talk to someone to protect myself and see where I stood. He gave me the number for a guy named Adrian Thorne, said he was tough but fair. That afternoon, I found myself in Adrian's office. It was one of those sleek places with massive windows looking out over the city. He listened to me with that neutral look lawyers get, like he'd heard it all before. He summarized it back to me: my wife agreed to be a surrogate for her ex-boyfriend, kept the relationship a secret, and had already started the medical side of things. I told him that was exactly right and I wanted to know my options, legally, financially, the whole 9 yards. Adrian started taking notes. He asked if I'd signed any surrogacy contracts. When I told him Sarah said she'd handle the paperwork, he actually looked a bit relieved. He told me that in most places, these contracts need the spouse's consent. If she forged my name or just skipped me entirely, that contract might not even hold up. But then he reminded me that while it helps with the surrogacy mess, it doesn't change the divorce side of things much. The word divorce really hit me then. Hearing it out loud made the whole thing feel real. I asked him what that would even look like. He told me it'd be fairly straightforward since we don't have kids. We'd split the assets, sell the house or have one of us buy the other out. He said the surrogacy makes it messy emotionally, but legally, that baby isn't hers to keep anyway. Then he leaned in and told me to take some time. He suggested counseling, saying 6 years of marriage deserved more than just a snap decision made in anger. I left there with a folder full of info and a giant hole in my chest. I couldn't go back to the house, so I checked into a hotel downtown. It was one of those corporate spots that smells like cheap air freshener and feels completely empty. My phone was still buzzing with Sarah's messages. "Please come home, I'm so sorry, we can fix this." Around midnight, she called again. Against my better judgment, I picked up. She sounded like she'd been crying for hours. She wanted to know where I was and if I was safe. I told her I was fine, but I just needed some space. She flipped out a bit, saying I'd been gone for 14 hours and she was about to call the cops. I told her I was at a hotel because I couldn't even look at her without feeling sick to my stomach. She started sobbing again, admitting she made a mistake and should have asked me instead of just telling me. She kept saying she loved me, but I didn't want to hear it. I told her it looked like she loved the idea of helping Michael more than she respected our marriage. She tried to claim it was all clinical and medical, that there was no emotional connection at all. I told her, "You're having his baby, Sarah. How much more connected can you get?" She kept insisting she was just a vessel for them. That word, vessel, it made me flinch. Like she was just a container and not my wife. I asked her if she'd started the hormones yet. She got quiet, then admitted she'd had her first shot 2 days ago. I gave her an ultimatum: stop the treatments. Tell them you can't do it. I told her that since I didn't consent, the contract was probably garbage anyway. That was my one condition for even thinking about coming home. She went silent. I could hear her breathing, real fast and shallow. Then she said she couldn't. She'd given her word. Jennifer was counting on her, and they'd spent so much money. I told her straight, "I'm asking you to choose. Them or me. Michael's family or our marriage." She begged me not to make her choose, saying we could do counseling and work it out, but she couldn't back out on Jennifer. My heart just shattered right then. She was actually choosing them over me. I told her, "Then I guess you've made your choice," and I hung up the phone. The next 3 months were just cold. I moved back in, but I stayed in the guest room. We were basically roommates, 2 strangers sharing a house and being polite about it. She kept going to her appointments and getting her shots, and I just lived my life. Work, gym, dinners with my brother, anything to stay out of that house. Sarah tried at first. She'd cook my favorite stuff, leave me notes, try to start a conversation. But I got really good at that, polite but bored, routine. I'd just say, "Thanks," or "I have plans," and leave it at that. Every short answer was just another brick in the wall I was building. I had to watch her body start to change, too. The hormones turned her into an emotional wreck. She'd cry at random commercials or laugh way too hard at stuff that wasn't even funny. I didn't feel anything, or maybe I felt so much that I just went numb. The day for the embryo transfer was set for a Tuesday in May. Sarah came to the door of the guest room, looking all hesitant, and asked if I'd go with her for support. She said she knew things were bad, but she was scared. "This is a massive procedure, Caleb, and I'm I didn't even look up from my laptop. I just told her to go ask Jennifer or Michael. I figured he'd probably love to be right there in the room while she got pregnant with his kid. She flinched like I'd actually hit her and called me cruel. I didn't see it that way, I told her it was just being honest. It was their big moment, not mine. I was just the husband who was currently in the way of their plans. She walked out without saying another word. On the day of the transfer, I just went to work like it was any other Tuesday. I shut my phone off and buried my head in meetings and paperwork. When I finally got home that evening, her car was sitting in the driveway. I found her on the couch with a heating pad on her stomach, looking completely drained and pale. I asked her if it worked, my voice totally flat. She said it was too early to know and she had to wait 2 weeks for a test. I just nodded and went into the kitchen to fix myself some dinner. I could hear her crying softly in the other room, but I didn't go in there. Whatever was coming next, she'd made her bed. She was going to have to be the one to lie in it. During those 2 weeks of waiting, I wasn't just sitting around. I was making moves. I opened up a separate bank account and started quietly moving my money over. I got in touch with a realtor about putting the house up for sale. I even called Adrian Thorne back and told him to get the divorce papers ready, though I told him to hold off on filing until we knew for sure about the pregnancy. He asked why I was waiting, and I couldn't even bring myself to say it out loud, that if it failed, maybe there was a tiny shred of hope for us. But if she was actually carrying his baby? That was the end of the road. The positive test came on a Saturday morning. I was out in the garage, just messily organizing tools I knew I'd probably never use again, when she appeared in the doorway. She looked terrified and happy all at once. "It worked," she whispered. "I'm pregnant." Something inside me just snapped right then. It wasn't my heart, that had been broken for months. This was different, it was just total acceptance. It was the moment I finally let go of any hope. I just said, "Congratulations," and went right back to sorting bolts by size. As the months went by, the pregnancy followed the script. Morning sickness hit at 6 weeks. At 8 weeks, she brought home ultrasound photos to show me, but by the time she held them out, I'd already walked out of the room. At 16 weeks, we found out it was a boy. She started decorating the guest room, the one I'd been living in, with blues and yellows, turning it into a nursery even though she knew that baby was going to another house. I started keeping a record of everything. Not because I cared, but because I was being cold and methodical. Every doctor's visit I wasn't part of, every dinner with Jennifer and Michael that she tried to hide from our shared calendar, I noted it all. I was building an airtight case of emotional abandonment for my lawyer. But I never picked a fight. I became like a ghost in my own home. I was there, but I was invisible. She'd try to get me to talk about the baby's heartbeat or how he was kicking, and I'd just give her these clinical, one-word answers. "That's good," or "their choice," whenever she mentioned they were naming him Oliver. I was perfectly polite and perfectly distant. I was just done. My brother Simon saw right through me when we grabbed drinks in July. Sarah was 5 months along, and I'd already taken off my wedding ring. He told me I looked like hell and asked when I last slept. I just shrugged it off, telling him sleep was overrated. He asked if I'd actually talked to her, and I told him there was nothing left to say. "I'm just waiting it out," I told him after a long pull of my beer. "She's due in November. I'm gone right after that. The house is already staged for the market, the divorce papers are ready, and I've got a new apartment lined up." Simon just stared at me, shocked at how much I'd planned. I told him I'd had 6 months to do nothing but think. While she was building a nursery for another man's kid, I was building a life without a wife. Simon tried to say it wasn't fair, that he saw her tagging me in stuff on Facebook and trying to include me. I told him social media wasn't the reality I was living. Reality was hearing her on the phone laughing with Michael about baby names, or overhearing her tell Jennifer that I was just being difficult. She killed our marriage the second she said yes to them. I was just making the paperwork official. Summer turned into fall, and Sarah got bigger. She eventually stopped trying to talk to me and spent her time on video calls with the two of them, planning the real nursery at their place and talking about doctors. I'd hear her laughing with them through the walls, that real, genuine laugh she used to have with me. Sometimes I'd hear her crying late at night, and a part of me wanted to go to her, but then I'd think about that Facebook photo and the lies. The feeling would just die. In September, she had a false labor scare at 2 a.m. Her car wouldn't start, so I ended up driving her to the hospital. She was gripping my hand in the passenger seat, huffing through contractions, and for a split second, I remembered why I loved her. Then her phone buzzed. It was Michael. "It's okay, just false labor," she told him. "Yeah, Caleb's here." "No, he's fine. Love you too." My grip on the steering wheel went so tight my knuckles turned white. "Love you too." At the hospital, they told us it was just Braxton Hicks and sent us home. In the car, she finally brought up the phone call. She tried to tell me it wasn't what I thought, that they'd just gotten close because of the process and it wasn't romantic. I just told her I didn't care. I told her if she wanted to love them, she'd have all the time in the world come November when I was gone. She didn't say a word the rest of the way home. October came with a chill that matched exactly how I felt inside. The house went up for sale, but she was so focused on the birth she didn't even notice the lockbox on the front door or the photos online. I finalized my new place and scheduled the movers for November 10th, just a few days after her due date. My lawyer had the papers ready to go, and I'd even finished the note I was going to leave on the table. It was short, factual, and final. Sometimes I'd just sit there and study Sarah, this woman who used to be my entire world. She'd hum to that baby, rubbing her belly and talking to him about the life he was going to have with his real parents. She'd completely fallen in love with the idea of this grand sacrifice. She'd convinced herself it was this beautiful, noble gift, and she was totally blind to what it was actually costing her. Sarah went into labor on November 3rd. Her water broke at dawn, and she didn't even call me, she called Jennifer first. I only found out because I heard her through the bathroom door, giving them the play-by-play on her contractions. She told them I was there to drive her, then she came out with her hospital bag already packed. For the first time in months, she actually looked at me. Not just past me, but at me. She asked if I'd take her, and I just grabbed my keys without saying a word. The drive was surreal. She was breathing through the pain while staring at her phone. She told me Jennifer and Michael were 20 minutes away. I just said, good for them. Then she tried to reach for my hand on the gear shift. I moved it to the steering wheel. She started begging, asking if we could really try to fix things once she recovered. I kept my eyes on the road. I asked her if she thought there was even enough left to fix. She cried, saying 6 years of marriage shouldn't just vanish. I told her straight, she was the one who vanished months ago. She'd been playing house with them while I became a stranger in my own home. She claimed she thought I'd come around and see her act as something selfless. I told her selfless would have been being honest with her husband. This was selfish, she wanted to do this, consequences be damned, and she just called it noble to make herself feel better. Another contraction hit her hard, and she started sobbing, saying she finally saw what she'd done to us. She begged for a chance to make it right, but we were already at the hospital. I just told her, let's get you inside. The delivery ward was a mess of nurses and monitors. When Jennifer and Michael showed up, they immediately flanked her bed. I just stood by the door like an observer at someone else's life event. Michael finally noticed me and thanked me for bringing her, then casually told me they could take it from here if I wanted to leave. That dismissive tone, the way he just assumed I'd shove off, was the final straw. I looked at Sarah, all vulnerable and sweaty, then at Michael's hand on her shoulder and Jennifer's tears of joy. I just said, yeah, I think I will. Sarah's eyes went wide, and she begged me to stay, but I told her she clearly needed them, not me. I walked out and didn't look back. I didn't go home. I drove to a park and sat on a bench watching the sun come up. My phone kept buzzing with updates, dilation, epidurals, but I didn't read a single one. Oliver Michael Richardson was born at 4:47 p.m. I found out through a text that included a photo, Sarah, looking radiant and exhausted, holding a baby with Jennifer and Michael on either side. It was a perfect family portrait, and it was clear I didn't belong in it. She looked happy. Truly happy. I realized right then that she'd gotten exactly what she wanted. She got to be the hero in Michael's story. I sent one text back, "Congratulations, I'm glad he's healthy," and then I went home and started packing. I didn't wait for the movers. I grabbed my clothes, my laptop, and some old photos from before the lies started. I stripped my presents out of the guest room and left the master bedroom exactly as it was. By dawn, my car was loaded. I stood in the living room one last time, looking at where we'd built a life that didn't exist anymore. I took our wedding photo off the mantle and packed it away, not because I wanted it, but because she didn't deserve that version of us anymore. Then I left the note. I told her she'd given Michael a life, but she'd lost the one we built. I told her the house was sold, the divorce papers were coming, and not to contact me. I told her she wanted to give Michael's family everything they needed, and she succeeded, but you can't give back what you've already thrown away. I left my wedding ring and my house keys on top of that note. My phone rang with a call from the hospital as I was locking the door. I silenced it and drove away. 3 days later, Jennifer and Michael drove her home to an empty house. My brother Simon told me she called him hysterical, sitting on the kitchen floor clutching my ring. She told him she never thought I'd actually leave, that she thought I'd just get over it once the baby was born. Simon asked me what I was going to do now. I looked around my new, quiet apartment and told him I was going to live the life I should have started 9 months ago. Sarah tried to reach me for weeks, calls, emails, even showing up at my work. I blocked her and had my lawyer handle it all. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. We split everything down the middle, though you can't really divide a future in court. I heard later that she fell into a deep depression and stopped talking to Jennifer and Michael because she couldn't stand to look at what that surrogacy cost her. Sometimes I wonder if I was too cold. If I should have fought harder. But then I remember that photo of her glowing with pride, holding Michael's son. I remember 9 months of being a ghost. I remember her telling another man, "Love you too." I know I made the right call. You can't build a life with someone who's already given the foundation to someone else. Sarah learned that the hard way. She gave Michael's family everything they ever wanted, and it cost her everything she had.